Hi there, welcome to Storytime. I hope you're having a great day and that you are ready to kind of stretch your mind a little bit. Because the thing that I'm noticing for myself is that this year, right, of COVID, but actually for me, it's been going on a little bit longer than that because I've had quite a bit of professional transition for the last 3 years. So that's not to say that you also haven't been challenged to show up for your life in the last year, year and a half, 3 years, or 5 years. Adulting is hard. Being an ethical, responsible individual is challenging, for sure. But here's the thing that I wanted to kind of touch on today for Storytime is that just like we have a choice about where we go to work, maybe even where we live or who we partner with in terms of our life partners, in terms of our business partners, not all of those choices work out in the end. But it's the power of the choice that matters most when it comes to living vibrantly, when it comes to practicing yoga as an intention, as a mindfulness to align our body, breath, and our mind. So the question that I'm working with today is really, what about those hard things, those adulting things that really, I don't have a choice to not do them, but they're not my favorite. That's a phrase that I learned from a dear friend of mine. She taught it to her daughter when she was offered food or an experience that she really didn't like. So think of that soft, smushy vegetable that's really hard to swallow. My friend's daughter would say, that's not my favorite. Rather than saying yuck or that's disgusting or that's awful, she conditioned herself to reframe her experience as that's not my favorite. Now it's been almost, she's 18. My daughter and her daughter been besties since toddler years. And in those 18 years, this phrase has been permission for me to experience something, to go ahead and eat something, for example, even though I don't particularly like it. Brussels sprouts, for example. I've tried to like Brussels sprouts, but they're not my favorite. Now, I have a kid who actually likes Brussels sprouts. So I circulate Brussels sprouts, especially the teeny tiny baby ones when they're fresh in the season. I can circulate those into our dinner menu, and I can enjoy them enough, partly because it's not all the time, partly because I enjoy watching my child enjoy them, and partly because I can, right? I can set aside my attachment to always liking what I eat to choose to eat something that I don't prefer, but I know is either good for me or not bad for me or neutral, in which case there really is no consequence to this choice in a way that's going to be harmful. Now, all of that said, what I'm talking about today is trying to work from a mindset that lets go of our expectations, that lets go of our attachments just long enough, maybe even for half of a breath, half of a second even, that we can consider the possibility that this is a choice. Now, some choices are exciting. Some choices are hard, right? That aside, the point is that when we can reframe something as a choice, we can then cultivate our relationship with it. And so when things are hard, when I'm not good at something, whether it's eating Brussels sprouts or cooking Brussels sprouts or cleaning my bathroom or, well, let's be honest, I'm not particularly good at being patient in times of transition. I want to fast forward to the point where I can play easefully on my day-to-day life, my work, my family, my home, my friends, travel, all the things that really help to keep me inspired, keep me in a state of engagement and activity. But here's the catch. Those things are outward things that I love to do. But really controlling the inside environment is where we really start to live the practice of yoga. And that's about the power of choice. That, my friends, is about reframing our life's tasks, not as to-do list items, not as work in the terms of I have to, I should, but in terms of what I get to, a choice. And I choose play. Why? Because research has demonstrated that play is one of the 10 qualities, one of the 10 practices that help us to live in happiness, live intimately with inspiration, joy. So, how does that fit in here? Well, play is a mindset. Play is about, in fact, framing what it is that we do, not as what it's going to bring to us in the long term or even the short term, but about being in the moment. There is nothing more mindful than play. The difference is whether or not it has a result that we're working toward or the experience in the moment. And this is where in our modern world we tend to kind of trip ourselves a little bit up in that play has to be purposeful. Now there's a whole genre of play for purpose, right? There is benefit for sure, but play in the moment is purposelessness. Is purposeless. That's the word I'm looking for. So when you think about reframing your to-do list, especially those things that are not your favorite, especially those things that you're not particularly good at, can you look at them as an opportunity to play? We don't have to be perfect when we play, right? When we really embrace the properties of play, it's about exploration. It's about adventure. Sometimes we trip and fall. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes it doesn't work. But there's something inherent about play, the permission to begin again, the permission to do over without shame or guilt. That's the part that I want to reclaim for all of us, not just myself, but for all of us as adults, because it's so easy to fall into this internal judgment, this internal disregard for our spirit and our value based on our most recent performance. Hence, I failed. Hence, it didn't work. So, can we reframe? Well, here are some ground rules, and these come from a researcher, specialist, Dr. Brown, who specializes in the concept of play. So he says, first and foremost, that play is done for its own sake. In other words, it seems purposeless. It is also done voluntarily. Here's where the choice comes in. If you've ever had to participate in a mandatory team building event, maybe you're familiar with that sense of dread, the sense of, this cannot be for real. This cannot be a requirement for me to be a team member, to be employed. So what if you reframed it from the point of, yeah, this is dumb. This is not my favorite, but I'm going to show up as authentically as I can and let it be what it is, an opportunity for experimentation, an opportunity to be a little silly, perhaps. What would happen? Now, that said, I understand that sometimes when we have an obligatory responsibility to, quote, play, whether it's showing up at a family reunion or a family event or participating in a forced fun teamwork event at work, those aren't always safe places. That is not where we tickle the edge of being our most vulnerable self. It's where we find that happy place that we can tickle the edge without falling off the cliff, without risking repercussions, especially if the environment itself is not all that safe, right? So what else is play about? Play is about having a passion or an interest, and this is where the mind can really help us to navigate. Find something. If you don't love ropes course, right? And that's the team building event that your workplace is doing or your family is going on a hiking adventure. What is one small nugget of that you can find as an inquiry, as an interest, as passion? And when we focus on that little bit, it gives us room to tolerate that which we don't find favorite, right? When we immerse ourselves in play, this is more about how we know whether or not we've got there. Dr. Brown says that we experience kind of this escape from time. When runners talk about that zone where they can keep on keeping on, this is what we're kind of talking about, in the sense that we lose sense of time. We escape from the reality momentarily. It's not that we aren't in consequence of what the real life is. It just means that we're in a temporary state where we don't have to pay attention to that. And that is only available if we are safe enough in our understanding of our worldview that we can release that kind of subconscious panning for threat, right? So if we can release that subconscious panning for threat, that anxiety, that forebodingness of something's going to happen that's bad here, we can set that aside, because in reality we are safe. Then we can cultivate this freedom, this escape. And in that space, then we can also let go of some of our ego of posturing and performing, in which case practice being imperfect, practice playing. Now, Brene Brown, not Dr. Brown, Stuart Brown, who is the play expert, but they have a lot of overlap. My two Browns that I love for their input into this world of living mindfully and living intentionally, living passionately with inspiration. But her story, Brene Brown's story, is about being with ourselves authentically so that we can be with each other more deeply, more authentically. So when we can dance like no one is watching, we are no longer trying to present or perform, but we're just being. Even if that means we're awkward, we're clumsy, we don't have TikTok-worthy moves, whatever that might be. Improvisational potential. This is one of my favorites because it's one of the styles in which I bring into my yoga practice as well, which is there's a rough agenda, a rough flow planned out in my head before each practice, but whoever shows up influences that flow, and how I show up influences that flow. So there's a level of improvisation, and for me, that's freedom, that's play. And then there's also this desire for continuation. Now, in that doesn't mean that we go on to play forever. In fact, that's one of the myths that we have to address, is that we kind of fall into this trap of all or nothing. Well, if I start playing, I'm never going to stop playing. Well, that's not true, right? Just like everything else in life, we ebb and flow. We rise and fall with the tides. So give yourself time to play. And if you're at all worried about getting lost in the moment, set an alarm, just like we do for our meditation practices, to bring you back out of that playtime so that you can choose again what's next. And even if that what's next is not your favorite, the high, the dopamine, the serotonin hit of having that little bit of time to play, whether it was just a couple of minutes or a couple of days, having that high will give you a little more optimism, a little more hope to take into the practice that's going to require perhaps some more attention, some more work, because it needs to be done. So, can we reframe the work that has to be done as opportunities for inquiry? And can we cultivate actual free time to play so that we've got that boost to carry over into the work that is really just, as my friend Maddie says, not my favorite. So that's my story time share today. I hope there's something in there that's a benefit to you. And I want to invite you to please reply. Chat here on the Facebook page, or send me a direct link, an email, a text, a personal message, so that I can know how to meet you where you're at. There's no benefit to these connection times if we don't actually connect. So how can I best support you in living your best, most authentic life intimately with inspiration? Be well. Take care of you and take care of those around you. May you breathe deeply and move freely, labor lovingly, and live vibrantly. I hope to see you soon. Namaste.